Good morning, and thanks for joining us for another one of our Campfire Chats. This morning I'm joined by Cath Hope of Atos, and Cath and I will be chatting about the importance and value of embedding behaviours and values within early careers talent in your organisations. So Cath, thank you ever so much for joining us. I thought it might be good if just at the start you could share with us a little about your role and about Atos and the part that you play within the organisation.
Yeah, perfect, Nat, and good morning, everybody. My name's Cath, and I'm the Emerging Talent Lead at Atos, and what that means is that I look after our graduates, interns, and apprentices, and that can be right from the very start, going out to schools and colleges and universities, and then also once they join Atos for the first 18 months of their career, I'll have some involvement with them as well. Atos as an organisation perhaps aren't a household name, but we're a big player, a big global player in the digital IT and tech sector, and we have quite a lot of government and private sector accounts in the UK where we provide digital services for different parts of government and private sector to help them solve their issues in terms of really bringing their companies and organisations into modern technology and supporting with digital transformation.
Great, thanks, Cath. And I mean the way of the world is digital is everywhere, and there's no hiding from it. So in an organisation like Atos, what are your core values and behaviours that you're trying to embed within Atos?
So there's various different kind of behaviours that I think are important, and particularly in our emerging talent. So teamwork and cooperation. We all work in teams in Atos, and the teams might not be just internal Atos people. You know, we work with teams with our clients as well. So that teamwork and cooperation is really important, and making that impression to our clients as well as internally. Decision making, really important, because you know we need to do the right things to help our clients move forward, and so being able to make those decisions is really important. Planning an organisation as well. A lot of the projects we do can be quite long term. There will be short term ones as well, but really that being able to organise and plan, down from doing your day-to-day planning, but also longer term planning as well. Yeah, exactly. And I think in terms of kind of values from Atos, then inclusivity, really important to us. We have a real range of employees in our organisation, from 16 to actually I know of an employee who's over 70 still working in the organisation. So that inclusivity in terms of all of us are at different stages in our careers, but also male versus female, you know, and ethnicity as well. So really we want everybody from all walks of life in our organisation, because the companies we work for have clients and customers in all walks of life. So that inclusivity is really important, both internally to make all of our employees feel welcome and accepted, but also to know that we can represent the customers that we're working for.
And that's really interesting when you said about, you know, the teams being with your partners as well. So embedding not only Atos values, but your partner organisation values. That must add a complexity to it for you and your staff as well, to make sure that, you know, they're not only learning one set of values, which for some members of staff, that's hard enough, but you've got to learn a secondary one as well. So.
Yeah, and I think you know, a lot of our clients who come to Atos, when they've been through the process of deciding to come to Atos, will have had a look at our values to see if they match their organisational values. Yeah. So actually, for a lot of cases, there will be crossovers or similarities. So in some senses, that makes it a little bit easier. But you're right, in terms of different organisations have teams that work in different ways. So people people, might work with one organisation that likes to do things one way, and then they might move on to a new project and need to learn a different way.
Yeah.
But I think that all adds to the richness of actually our own experience and our own careers, and I think it's a good thing that people get exposed to that.
Definitely. So from your experience and your knowledge over many years, what should you include within, if someone's out there now and they're looking to develop their early careers program, how would you best say you can to help prepare apprentices or graduates to develop those key behaviours?
Yeah, so I think this is where obviously Outward Bound have a really great part to play in this, because I think some of those things that I've talked about, the organisation and planning, the teamwork and cooperation, communication as well, all of those skills can really be put to the test and improved upon in just a really short time at Outward Bound Trust by young people. So I think it's really important to have some kind of early training for your apprentices or your graduates, and I think we do that both with Outward Bound Trust, and then we have another set of training that our apprentices go on, which again is all about their learning and themselves. So it's not about Atos, it's about them, and they'll learn what skills they have, what skills they might need to develop, how they deal with conflict, how to deal with communicating to people who are perhaps, their line managers, or even much more, at a much more higher level in the organisation as well. And so I think those two elements of the training that we do, I think work really well together, because there's the element of that outdoor fun experience, but also bringing it back to the business and personal skills that they're going to develop. And then there's the training that they do that very much asks them to look inwards at themselves to then learn how they can better behave and communicate at work. So I think those are important, and I think also what's important is to make sure that they can be involved with people who are like them. So we know that in a team you will have people of all ages, but actually for young people it's really important that they have other people they can relate to. And maybe talk to when they want to speak about something. So we have a community that all of our graduates, interns and apprentices are part of, and we have monthly calls, and they can get involved in lots of different activities that really increases their network, but also gives them opportunity to kind of speak to other young people to see how they've dealt with a particular issue or how they're finding things, and just be a part of that, really.
Yeah, shared experience with your peers, which is great. So a couple of external interventions really is the way Atos are approaching behaviours.
And I think there will be, there will be an element of every day you'll be with people and you'll be learning, won't you, through the doing. But I think it's important, and I think it just sets people up if they've got that, that real focus straight away. Yeah.
And would you say, Cath, that there are particularly bigger gaps in some areas of behavioural development than others? Are you recognising that there's a bigger gap in certain areas or not?
So I think from an Atos point of view, things have probably changed a little bit since the pandemic, because Atos, being a tech company, have quite a lot of people who don't work from an office site and who work remotely, and really that has spread throughout all of our layers of employment, so to speak, so emerging talent included. And what actually, there was a lot of negatives towards the pandemic, which we're all aware of, but actually there was a little bit of a positive in there, in terms of young people did have to get used to learning remotely, working remotely, and actually making sure that they still got things done, even though, for example, there wasn't a teacher in the room with them, and that. So I think that has actually helped to get people ready for the world of work. But I think what probably has been missed is that, you know, work experience probably didn't happen. So the actual understanding of what it's like to go into an office and how to present yourself, you know, when you walk through those doors is probably something that I think is has been difficult for those young people who missed out on that experience. So I think there's been pros and cons, and there's some things that maybe need a little bit more support on from, again, peers and colleagues who are already in the business can help with that. But also there's some benefits in terms of, you know, the young people who are coming through now have had to adapt, you know, being adaptable is a key skill that actually, you know, is really important, and they've had to adapt, haven't they, to the situation that we were all put in.
Yeah. So you talked a bit around the changes in young people post-pandemic to pre-pandemic. And I guess, you know, one of the things we hear and see is this area around, are they less work ready now than they were before? And actually what you're saying is your experience within a tech industry is that actually not necessarily in all areas, but just in some particular behaviours then, which is very interesting, because other companies that we've talked to are seeing it more on the practical side, which does come through the work experience, etc., as you talked about. But at Atos, you take on apprentices throughout the year, don't you? You don't have a kind of one-hit wonder of taking on a cohort. So the community hub that you described, has that been part of that journey? Is that one of the reasons that you have that? So as new people join throughout the year, they've already got an established group that they can work with and be supported by? Is that one of the reasons for that?
So the community has been going for quite a while, actually, and it was created just to give that kind of peer-to-peer community, but also to really grasp onto the enthusiasm and the ability that young people have to get involved in initiatives. And I think that being involved in those initiatives can really help cement an employee's commitment to an organisation, and also support them to help causes that they're interested in. So it hasn't directly been created because of the pandemic, but I think it's become more important. And I think the fact that we do this external training, both with Outward Bound, where they'll be there with other apprentices that have joined at different times than them and in different parts of the organisation, because Atos, you know, we have about 10,000 employees in the UK. We're a really large organisation, so you know, they're not going to meet everyone, they're not going to know every part of the business, but being able to go and spend, you know, some time with people from different parts of the business is really useful. And then the other training that we do, what we've introduced, and this has been introduced since the pandemic, is that we put them on that training with some interns. So those are people who are at university but doing a gap year. And what we found is that different view that the interns can bring and that the apprentices can bring in different experiences is actually really helpful and can build up other connections for them as well. And I think that's something that is working well. And we see, you know, interns and apprentices keeping in touch and really forming, you know, business relationships, of course, but actually friendships that will probably last long after, you know, things have changed in the organisation.
And that must all help with your retention of staff as well. So in terms of retaining apprentices throughout their apprenticeship, and so you're not losing people, all of those initiatives such as the community hub, sharing people together, etc., that all must be supporting that to enable it to happen, would you say?
Yeah, and I think you can't help but reading the press about the labour market at the moment, in terms of so many different jobs out there, and actually perhaps not enough people to fill those roles. So I think increasingly for organisations, it's important to keep their employees. I think for apprentices, what you see is that if they're given the right opportunities and the right support, then actually you do get that connection with the organisation.
Yeah.
And at Atos, one of the things that we try and do to really continue that is that if an apprentice joins on a level 3 or a level 4, we like to give them the opportunity to then progress to the next level, so that they can carry on with that learning. And potentially, apprentices may have decided to go down the apprenticeship route because university wasn't for them,
Wasn't
but
them.
really
Yeah.
they might still want to get a degree. And the way that we can support with that is actually by letting them progress through the levels and move on to do a degree apprenticeship while they're with us as well.
Yeah. And is there much uptake on that? Is that something that people are, linking onto really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of our apprentices, look for the next
Next
level when
step.
they've
Yeah.
finished, depending on what their role is. Sometimes it might be an immediate progression, so software development level 3 to software development level 4. But for others, they might have moved roles, so they might move from software development into a more cybersecurity role, or something
Mhm.
different, depending on where their career path has taken them. And I think the fact that at Atos we hire our apprentices permanent straight from day
Yeah.
one, so it is a career. We are hiring apprentices because we want to keep them, we want them to stay, and we want them to really have a productive career with us.
And are you seeing an increase in recruitment? The people applying for your apprenticeships, or has that stagnated post pandemic?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think it really depends on the role, and
Oh,
I've been
okay.
talking to
Yeah.
some apprenticeship providers and some schools about this, and I think what the pandemic has done is perhaps now students are scoring perhaps better in their
Yeah.
qualifications than were anticipated, or perhaps that they thought, and that might give them a different option than perhaps they were thinking of. So some of those people might decide, actually, I can now do a university route, and that's what I want to do. But on the flip side, what we're also seeing, and I think cost of living and
Yeah.
challenges like that, is also making young people think about, well, if I go to university, then I'm going to have my university fees to pay
Debt.
back, and I'm
Yeah.
going to have my debt. And actually, an apprenticeship offers a different route from that, doesn't it? Because they will
Yeah.
be earning money while they're learning, and the learning is funded, so they don't have to pay for that. So I think there's no one sign one way or the other. I think it really depends.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kath. And we talked a bit before about values and how you're embedding the values through your apprenticeship and graduate programs. But do you see what you're doing in early careers in your area of Atos? Do you see that being reflected in other parts of the organisation? Are they using some of the ways that you embed values throughout the rest of the organisation to make sure all staff are adhering to the values of the organisation?
So I think our emerging talent, our graduates, interns, and apprentices are actually in a really lucky position, because the stuff that we do for them is really unique to them. So
Right.
they get a real, I suppose, real advantage in terms of receiving that really great experience. And I think there are other ways we embed it with our other employees. But I think that you, in Atos, I've mentioned, we have lots of different people from different
Hmm.
generations in the workforce, and I think what works for our emerging talent is probably a bit different than what works for other people. So I think it's something that we're really conscious that we need to do something different, and that
Hmm.
actually, as our as our strategy on emerging talent, and that initial training has changed as time has gone on. I think we've got to a really good place now where we're embedding it in different ways, and we're getting them engaged with different people from a very early on in their careers. So I think it works really well. I think for other people there's different ways of doing that perhaps isn't given isn't given the focus in that condensed way that we do for our apprentices and graduates.
And the apprentices that are coming through, we talked a bit about how they're adapting to using tech, etc., since the pandemic. But what about maturity levels, Cath? Have you seen much drop in the young people that are coming through your doors? Have you seen that level of maturity decrease at all?
So I think it really depends, and I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is about people or individuals, and I think I came to the Outward Bound Trust last October, I think it was, and we had one of our apprentices who was 16 at that point in time, but displayed really high levels of maturity in some ways, and other people who may be older, perhaps not so much. So I think it really depends, but I think what the Outward Bound Trust can do is really kind of help people to all step up a notch. And I think that's the good thing. And I think that having those role models as well is really important. So that's where the community comes in, because in our emerging talent community, we'll have people who take on, coordination and leadership roles in that community who the apprentices can see and can think, I want to aspire to do that.
And in terms of behavioural development, obviously it's notoriously difficult to measure, otherwise we'd have been doing it for years. But in terms of how do Atos measure that? What's your approach to measuring your apprentices and graduates' behavioural development?
Yeah, so I think it's an integral part actually of our performance management process. So when we're looking at doing performance reviews, we don't just look at the what's been delivered, it's the how it's been delivered. And I think it's in that how is where you see all the behavioural stuff. So, that's where you might see the collaboration with the team and your colleagues. And that's where you'll be able to see, was it planned and organised properly? Or was it all a bit of a last minute rush and those kind of things? So I think having that, having it built in to be looking at not only the what's been delivered, but the how. And I think also those regular discussions, I think, are what can really help to measure it, because by having regular discussions, you're able to hear, oh well, I tried to do something this way and it didn't work, and so I tried it this way and it did work. And that behavior of being able to learn from those things that didn't go so well and be able to discuss those with your line manager is another way of demonstrating, that actually you're learning those behaviors that we would expect to be seen. But I agree. I think, is it a black and white way of measuring it? I just don't think.
Really.
I don't think we've got that, have we?
I don't think so. Not yet. No. And lastly, Cath, if I could ask you, so you're seeing lots of young people over the years coming through, and that transition, from education, formal education in school, into the world of work, and joining an early careers program. If you were going to give three pieces of advice to a young person to better prepare themselves, what would you suggest they do? It could be any time when they're in education or before they actually enter that transition.
Yeah, and there's probably lots of things to do, but I think what the first thing I'd say is grab every opportunity. So if you've got an opportunity to get involved in stuff that's extracurricular activity, do it, take it on, really embrace the challenge, because those are the kinds of experience that experiences that you can then reflect on and bring into the workplace. So I think that would be my top tip. I think in terms of other things you can do, you know, try and look at employers in the field that you're interested in going into, if you know what that is. So have a look at their websites, have a look at press articles about them, and try and work out what their values are and what kind of behaviours you think might be relevant in that organisation. You know, doing research before you even start looking for a role is a really good way to prep yourself to be in the field that you want to go into. So I'd say that. And I think also, and this is probably specific, I would say, well, not specific, but really relatable to the tech industry. Look at what free courses are out there to help you. So have a look at if there's coding courses that you can do, or if there's you know, free activities that you can get involved with that really demonstrate your passion for that particular industry. And I think in the tech world, there's lots of that out there. So I would say, you know, that's another real good way to evidence that you're wanting to learn and you're committed to the career that you're looking at. Yeah, those will be my 3 top tips, I think.
Great, some great advice there. And I think you're absolutely right. Grabbing every opportunity, what makes you stand out from the crowd, all of those things that employers are looking for in a crowded market at the moment. But equally on the free courses aspect, that there is so much out there. But being able to go out and look for it yourself and find it and grab it, I think is what people can make a difference for themselves, can't they? It doesn't have to be spoon-fed to them. Well, look, it's been lovely to chat to you this morning, Cath, and thanks very much for your time. I think there'll be some marshmallows for a proper campfire whizzing their way towards you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening in. And do get in touch if there's anything you'd like to pick up on from our conversation today. Thanks, Cath.
Thank you.